So let's check out the high-angle weapon system on the Revelation. Lasers are one of my personal favorite weapon systems in the game. I have been using lasers since I got the Balgorn. They're known to be good against shields. They're also known to have very nice range and very nice damage application. Now the Revelation's stats haven't been changed. This is how they look. And honestly, the Revelation is one of the tankiest Dreadnoughts in the game. The attributes and fittings on this ship remain the same as well. Now with the high angle weapons, I have 605.73 DPS, and here you can take a look at the weapon stats. 52.42 kilometer optimal range, 15.6 accuracy fall-off, 4.31 is the tracking speed, activation time 4.35. So it is significantly lower than the blasters on the Moros. Now let's quickly compare this to the main turrets. The main turrets will give you a lot more alpha damage, a lot more DPS, longer activation time, a bit longer range, but the tracking on the main turrets is significantly worse than the tracking on the high angle weapons, which is okay. The trade-off is pretty fair. The tracking on the high angle weapon turrets is about almost the same as the tracking on the beam lasers on the battleships, although I believe that the tracking on the battleship turrets is still a little bit better. Now as for the low slots and medium slots, this is basically the layout that I like to use. You can use target painters if you like, but I personally like to have a lot of webs. They are required to be able to hit the smaller targets. And in the low slots, I have basically the same high angle weapon setup that I like to use on my Dreadnoughts. The combat rigs are for DPS, engineering rigs are for maximum possible capacitor performance. And so far I'm quite happy with the results with a build like this. Now as for the implants, you can use the focus crystal or pulse crystal. However, I would recommend that you go use the pulse crystal, because with the high angle weapons, even with the best possible tracking that you can build on the ship, you will still miss the smaller targets quite easily if they are not wiped down, and that's one of the main reasons that is preventing me from using the focus crystal on the Revelation. Now I tried to make a long range build, but it felt a little bit weird because you still have a very long lock-on time, and small ships might actually get close to you by the time you lock them on. And again, if you're using the focus crystal, one miss and all the extra DPS will be wasted. But in the case of the pulse crystal, you have the permanent 50% damage boost, and it doesn't go away if you miss the target. Okay, well, we have another episode of me rearranging the modules, because the game just never saves the module out when I log out. Something that I just don't have luck with, I guess. Okay, let me just do this, and let me... How do I assemble this? Okay, this is going to be... Yeah, this looks nice. Okay. Now the Revelation will have a base armor resistance bonus from the skills, so the tank will be okay with a setup like this, although you can still choose the tank rigs if you like. 5.5 thousand DPS, 2 million hit points, which honestly it's not bad. 5000 DPS on 77.03 kilometers. The tracking is 3.91 because I did change the general unit into the range bonus for the tracking computers. .21 as well, but you get a good range. So if you technically want to snipe with this, you can, although I wouldn't be I wouldn't prefer that you snipe with a Dreadnought with the barreled or high angle weapons, because the ship is not going to move anywhere and small ships might actually approach. Now this is much better. Now the tracking is much better. Once I changed the general unit into the tracking unit, the DPS went up, the tracking went up quite a bit. And this is basically the preferred setup that I like to use on the turret Dreadnoughts with the high angle weapons, and also the setup that I like to use with the Phoenix. Overall, with the high angle weapon systems, you should go for maximum possible tracking with a build that is similar to this one. 2 adaptives, 2 repairs, 2 batteries and 2 tracking computers are the optimal build. You can technically slap 3 tracking computers if you sacrifice one of the other modules. No, I haven't done that. I haven't really had the reason to do that, but it's also one option that you can easily do. And here we are in the testing area. Well, this is about to be fun. Now I did the same thing with the Moros and with the Phoenix. Both performed really well. I actually started to prefer the Phoenix over the Moros lately because the Phoenix has so much alpha damage that it just pops. Doesn't matter how much damage you apply. You have like 65,000 alpha damage, and that's more than enough alpha damage to blow up anything that is within the range. Now the tracking on the Revelation is going to be a little bit lower than the tracking on the Moros, at least with the high angle weapons. With the normal capital turrets, the Moros has good tracking, but it doesn't have range. It has like 25 kilometer range with the blasters, while the Revelation has up to 120 kilometer range without any tracking computers with the capital pulse lasers. So this is why the Revelation is excellent for camps. The Revelation is also excellent for PvP, and I didn't have to use the tracking computers if I have the Daredevil tackle, as you all know. Now my shield went down very fast because I used my shield to basically keep the implant running and to keep the capacitor at 100%. You get a decent damage boost if your capacitor is at a very nice high percentage. Of course, the capacitor usage will be increased and the capacitor on this ship will slowly go down throughout this mission. Now, what would be, I would say, or should I say, what is the most effective high-angle weapon system? Well, it's a good question, because every single one of these weapon systems that I have tested out so far has been working really well. I don't really have any complaints about them. So far was really fun to use them, and overall they do get the job done. They're not overpowered because you have to sacrifice a lot of DPS, you have to sacrifice a lot of tank, and in some cases even more tank if you go with a build like this, or you can sacrifice even more tank if you use 3 track computers. Although 2 of them is more than enough, a decent balance between everything. However, a main turret capital ship will have a lot more tank
Enemy
than a
ships detected.
high-angle weapon system capital ship. That
We're
is, if
under
they
attack.
want to take advantage of the high-angle weapons. Because
We're
in
under
order to
attack.
maximize the efficiency and the lethalness of these turrets, you have to have DPS rigs and you have to use tracking computers. Because without the DPS rigs, the DPS would actually be not that impressive on all of the high-angle weapons. Without the DPS rigs, the DPS would fall about 3.5 to 4000 DPS, with the exception of the Moros that will still have a lot of DPS because blasters just have a lot of DPS by default. So that's the trick to the new weapons, and that's also one very nice balancing factor that I really like. Would be quite problematic if the turrets were able to make a lot of DPS without having to sacrifice anything. That would actually be unbalanced. So I'm glad that the developers made the turrets the way they are because they're good, and with a good build you can get the best possible performance out of them. And I noticed without the tracking computers you really have a lot of issues to hit anything smaller than a battlecruiser that's moving around your ship. Now when they're webbed, there is a chance that you can hit them, but it's still going to be very difficult. However, if you add the tracking computers and the general unit for tracking, then hitting the target becomes a lot easier. Of course, with the sacrifice made on the tank of the ship. However, a capital ship made to go fight up capitals doesn't really need a lot of tank because they will not do much damage to you anyways. And as you can see so far, I am going through the NPC ships without much of a problem. The Revelation does a very nice job at shooting them down. The extra range on this ship is going to help a lot if the target is slowly moving away from your ship. That was a problem that I found to be a small issue with the Moros because the blasters don't have a good range. However, lasers do solve that. Now I have been asked a lot, can this ship
Enemy ships
be used
detected.
in a similar way as the Apocalypse Striker?
We're under
Now that's a
attack.
very smart question, because I actually thought the same thing.
We're under attack.
And I did try it out to make the ship a sniper, and it felt really weird. Mostly because if I use like 4 track computers with range, I can get about 150 kilometer optimal range on this ship. However, the main issue isn't the fact that it doesn't have a lot of DPS or that the damage is not good, but the main issue was the small ships. They do have a very good chance to approach you, and you don't want any small ships to approach you. Now, I also thought about the idea to sacrifice the engineering rigs for targeting rigs, but they are not going to change much since this is after all a big capital ship, and it will take a while to lock on something small like a frigate or interceptor. So not really the best idea to use this as the Apocalypse Striker in the same way as the Apocalypse Striker. Don't forget, the Apocalypse Striker has a bonus on locking on targets. I think it has like that sensor strength bonus, 5% per level. So it does lock on targets a lot faster than the Revelation. However, if you drop the relation in the middle of the encounter, then that would work because it's a pretty tanky ship and you can take advantage of the 5 medium slot modules for a lot of webs and a lot of, well, not a lot of scramblers, but definitely one scrambler at least. And that will be enough to eliminate the speed of the smaller ships. Now the same rule applies to the Revelation as to the Moros and to the Neglifar. If there is a, let's say, small ship or medium-sized ship like a cruiser that's orbiting you at high velocity, outside of the web range you might be in trouble because there's a big chance that you are not going to be able to hit them. Now if they are moving away from you or if they are moving towards you, and if you lock them on time, and if they're using a micro-updrift, then you are going to be destroying them in basically one hit. So the same rule applies to this ship as it applies to the Apocalypse Striker and the other later ships. But so far I am clearing this encounter without a problem. My capacitor is slowly going down and the DPS output is also going down. Now, I remember reading that you can increase the damage output with the capacitor battery, but that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Now I have 2 capacitor batteries and I mostly save them for the armor repairs. Keep in mind that with a DPS build, the armor repair or shield boost capability of your capital ship will be drastically reduced. So you will have to use the armor or shield boosters or armor repairs a lot more often, which will result in a lot more capacitor usage, and that will result in your capacitor being less stable.
We're under attack.
Now I know that is easily repairable and solvable with the general units, but in the end it's not going to be the same feeling as when you are flying the Dreadnoughts with the classic tank rigs. The Dreadnought with the main turrets is usually a chunk, usually a very tanky ship that's very difficult to shoot down. Now I also like to say I have seen a lot of high angle weapons on Dreadnoughts in nullsec, but unfortunately all of them had the wrong build, and well, most of those that I have seen have been destroyed. So don't yeet your capital ship out with the high angle weapons without using the proper high angle weapon setup, because just because it's written that it's used to shoot down sub-capitals doesn't mean that it can do it by default on its own. You really have to build the capital ship around the high angle weapons in order to take advantage of it. And it's very weird because it seems like a lot of players expected the high angle weapon turrets to just mow down everything, which is of course not the case. But I guess if you're hunting these ships, you should take advantage of that and destroy as many as possible until they change the build. A proper high angle weapon Dreadnought will have track computers and they will have DPS rigs. Of course, a bit different from the classic main turret capital, but you know, that's what's making them interesting. No, I have something very funny here. When I just checked out my contracts, I mean my DM window in-game, there's one guy just sending me contracts like they expect me to accept the contracts. It's so weird. I don't do contracts in a very long time. The only items that I do get from the contracts are payments from blowing up ships. Of course, in ISK and in game. But this one guy keeps sending me some weird contracts. I don't know. It's a little bit weird. Not really sure what players expect, that I sleep on ISK or something. I mean, I had a decent amount of ISK, all of which came from PvP, by the way. But there are other players within the corporation or within the alliance that are probably 10 times more, that have 10 times more ISK in their wallet. The armor is at 57%. It's slowly going down, although I'm not really worried about the armor of this ship. I like that you have to do a lot of compromises in order to make the high angle weapons work. Reminds me on EVE Online. It's in a similar way, I think. And this mission is excellent for testing because it has about the same amount of ships like a storyline mission. And of course, it will take a very long time for me to move this thing from storyline to storyline, so it's just easier to run this one mission that has a lot of ships. And so far the clear times are good. The relation does shoot down the targets fairly easy. It did miss a lot of targets, just like the Moros, so that's one thing that I have to mention.
We're under attack.
Which is okay. It does miss until the target is nicely slowed down. And I honestly expect the same thing to be applied to the Naglifar as well. 25,000, okay, not bad. This is the last wave. Now with this ship, I would say, and with any other ship actually that you have, focus down the small targets first and then go after the big ones. Although here I do let them come close to me just to show you how the turrets work against targets that are webbed and scrambled, against targets that are close to your ship. Having webs and a scrambler is excellent defense against the small ships. Most tackle ships, most pirates don't really expect your capital ship to have webs and scramblers. They usually go for a 0-kilometer orbit. Now if you have a build like this that has a lot of tracking and a lot of webs, you can actually slow them down enough and pop them, which in some cases is going to be saving your ship. Now the same rule applies to this Dreadnought as well as for any other Dreadnought in the game. Once you siege up in the mission, you basically have no way to escape for about 2 minutes because of the cooldown. So I would not be using a Dreadnought in low sec for low sec encounters. That's just not a good idea. I would use them deep inside nullsec in your friendly territory, in your own pocket, where you have a lot of scouts watching the entry points, watching the pipes. That's one of the only ways how you will be 100% safe, that no one is going to tackle your ship during the 120 seconds of being unable to warp. In low sec, if you siege up at the wrong moment, well, you can expect a big fleet on you within the next couple of minutes. That's just how things are, and this is why flying these ships is very, very risky. However, is it fun to fly a capital with the high angle weapons? Yes, it is. It's a different experience that allows capital ship players to enjoy the ship even more without the need to skill out of some aspects of the game just to fly something else. Now you can do the same thing with the capitals, which is a good thing. However, you are still going to be a very big target, so the danger of being tackled remains about the same. Of course, getting tackled is going to be a bit more difficult. If you have a good build, you can easily kill it. You can easily kill a tackle. So it's going to be a very interesting moment when we receive the faction Dreadnoughts. Now, I have noticed a lot of players started to stockpile on the revelations. You know, why do players fly the... Why did they start to collect the revelations so much? Well, I guess I'm not the only one who is excited for the Chemush. I guess a lot of other players want that thing as well. So, don't be surprised if you see a lot of revelations on the contract windows, or on the trade channel, or in Yita, because there is going to be a lot of players who want to fly a faction Dreadnought. And I believe now a lot of them are actually slowly preparing for them, although I don't think that the faction capitals will be released that soon. I believe we have like half a year until that moment. That's just my expectations. But about half a year or 3-4 months, something like that, which is plenty of time, and that's plenty of time to gather enough ISK to buy one of these ships. And yes, I'm very excited for a faction Dreadnought. Wonder how the Angel one will look. I'm quite interested in that one, because I believe it should be one of the more unique ones in the game. Okay, well, that was a very smooth and a very chill mission. How did the revelation perform? Well, it performed well. I'm quite happy with the result. The last tracking did not affect the clear time much. It did do the job well. However, the DPS difference between the blasters and lasers are quite noticeable. The Moros did clear this a lot faster. The miss rate was about the same as with the Moros, which is surprising. I expected to miss a lot more, but in the end that wasn't a big issue. Okay, let's dock up this monster. Overall, like I said before, the Revelation is a very fun ship, very fun to fly one. And overall, if you have one of these ships, and if you are trying to decide if you should buy the high angle weapons, you should go and buy them. I mean, depends on the purpose that you assign the ship to. But if you like to camp, if you like to run encounters or anomalies in nullsec, then the high angle weapon turrets will definitely deliver the performance that you want them to. And well, with that being said, hope that you enjoyed, hope that the builds that you see here help at building your own ship. If it was helpful and if you enjoyed, feel free to like and subscribe. And with that being said, stay safe, fly safe, and as always, I'll see you next time.